Hi everyone, it's Dawn and I hope you're having a fantastic day. Well, we got an update on that story of the 16-year-old who fell from the balcony yesterday. It's not a good ending. We do have some news on the Icon of the Seas as Royal Caribbean has finally taken possession of that ship. We also have, talk about another new tax for cruisers, this time coming from Mexico, one of the most popular cruise destinations out of Florida. And they're talking about a tax for us as well. And then I have this kind of a weird story about a man, sandals, a spider, and eggs. And if you have any kind of arachnophobia, this is gonna freak you out. So our first story is an update on the story I had yesterday of the 16-year-old who fell from a few decks up to the main deck below on the Allure of the Seas. We found out what ship it was on, and unfortunately, despite the efforts of the crew and the doctors on board, the gentleman did pass away in hospital. They tried whatever they could do on the ship. You even heard people over the intercom asking for volunteers for blood donations. So I'm sure this is pretty devastating to not only the family and on board, and condolences completely to the family, but those doctors who tried whatever they possibly could to save this person's life. Unfortunately, it did not work out, and he did pass away in hospital. So again, condolences to the friends and family. Cruise line is not releasing anything. They're not saying if it was an accident or anything like that. They are just saying, out of respect for the family, they are not making any further comments, and we have to respect that. Next, we have Royal Caribbean has taken possession of the Icon of the Seas, which will shortly make her way over to North America. And at that point, you'll start to see them get things like the trees and everything installed on the ship, because they're not allowed to do it until they get into this. They can't cross over. So there's a whole bunch of rules of certain things that they can put on ships at certain places. And so the first thing they do when they get here, they're going to finish the ship basically and have it ready for the inaugural sailing, which will be on the 20th. There's a 3-day cruise on the 20th of January, another 3-day cruise on the 23rd, and finishing on the 26th. And I'm going to be on the one on the 20th, so I'm anxious to see what that ship looks like. If it's in as good a shape as the Ascent of the Seas is, then we'll be looking pretty darn good for that ship as well. Hopefully everything's up and running. Next, we have Mexico. Cozumel and Costa Maya are now talking a $5 tax, a cruise tax for all cruise ships visiting those ports. As you know, Cozumel especially is like one of the busiest cruise ports anywhere at any time in the Caribbean. Well, they're talking that $5 tax, and in a way I kind of think that what they're proposing, the way they're dividing it up, is pretty good. Now, the state itself will get 30% of the money that's given goes directly to like disaster relief. And as you know, that area gets hit quite a bit with the hurricanes and stuff like that. So 30% of all the tax raised goes to, protection and awareness and recovery and stuff like that from hurricanes. And the other 70% is designated strictly for tourism infrastructure. In other words, making sure the ferries are running, making sure there's adequate police force around, making sure the inspections on hotels and cruise ports are all kept up to date. And I think that might be not a bad idea. And at least they're not just saying it's going into government coffers. They're saying it's going into these designated areas, and that's what it'll be used for. And when at least they assign the tax to a certain thing, and it also comes back to possibly benefit the cruising industry as well and tourism as a whole, not to mention recovery of the people we're visiting in such emergency cases that hurricanes happen or anything along those lines, I think is not a bad situation. And I don't think anyone's not going to cruise because they have to pay an extra $5 on their cruise fare, at least not yet. However, if every single port you end up going to charges $5 every single time, it can start to add up. And some of them are looking at charging more than that, but let's hope that they keep this kind of stuff a little bit reasonable. Next, I have this really strange story about a man who was, all of a sudden his toe started to swell up, and it's really strange. But before I get there, let me just invite you to hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. If you want to keep up to date with everything going on in cruising, from the weird stories that I'm about to tell you, to the taxes that might be coming, to the new ships that are coming, and of course, unfortunate tragedies that do happen, to make us aware of the situation, to keep our eye out for lots of things going on around us. I really would appreciate it if you hit the subscribe. It doesn't cost a single thing, but boy, it really does help the channel out. Okay, a man was walking along in Marseille in France, and all of a sudden his big toe started to swell up. And when he went to see the ship doctor said, yeah, it looks like you were bitten by a wolf spider. And the guy's kind of like, what? He thought, and his wife thought, that they had these new sandals, and they were wearing these new sandals, so they thought it was just the leather rubbing up against the toe, and that caused an infection or a cut or something, and that's why the toe started to swell and turn purple. But it turns out a wolf spider had not only bitten his toe, but also laid eggs in his toe. Now the doctor cut it open and out spilled all these spider eggs out of the man's toe, and they treated him and disinfectant and everything like that. And when he went back home, he thought it was all cured. It's kind of a weird story to tell your friends, but when he got back home, he ended up having to go see the doctor again, and found that, well, despite the cleaning, the disinfectant, and everything that they had done, one of those spider eggs had survived. And in fact, this little tiny spider was stuck underneath the man's skin, still alive, trying to get out. And from all of the assumptions we can do is that the spider was trying to eat its way out of the toe. And eaten from a tiny spider. Obviously, it wasn't too painful because it was only like this big as a tiny spider. But the doctors cut it out and asked him if he wanted to keep the spider as a souvenir, and he said, "No, I think I fed that spider long enough." Imagine that. So just kind of like a little bit of a warning, folks. A lot of people love to wear sandals and things like that when they're out walking, but it's one thing to walk on the beach and places like that, but when you're walking through woods or trees or grass or anything like that, there can be insects out there that have access now to your bare skin, and that's when some infections, not to mention some plant life out there, you don't want to rub up against neither. So yeah, if you're walking along in France, out in the bush or in the woods or through the trees or in the grass, you might want to make sure you're wearing running shoes and not sandals. Well, I hope you appreciate this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Want to see more tips, more tricks, more travel vlogs from around the world? Hit that subscribe button. Till next time, have yourself a safe and a great vacation.